they keep causing great resets where the entire population is basically wiped out, and the rest of the people are made in baby making factories, and they're grown in a lab and stuff, like the Cabbage Patch Kids stuff. So
this passage was a connector to other worlds, and it has just been such a long time since we've seen anyone from the inner ice wall.
Oh my God, this story is getting crazy. You got giants coming. They made it beyond the wall, and it makes sense that, you know, there'll be conflict beyond the wall because they probably already knew. Admiral Byrd probably found out back in the day. Like, oh, there's other land out there, huh? For entertainment purposes only. Oh, there's other land out there, huh? I want that. You better lock in and buckle up, bucko, because you're in for another creepy and scary TikTok reaction video. It's your boy Jet Ski Chuck, aka Ace Jet Leader. We're about to dive into some more creepy and scary TikTok reaction videos. You want to be careful with these TikToks because these videos might make you change your whole reality and keep you up all night. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. And let's dive into these waters. This video is strictly for entertainment purposes only. It is up to us to do our own research and separate fact from fiction. This entire video is not factual. It hasn't been proven.
Oh my God!
Wow. I hope he didn't break your
He did crack it.
Did he?
Did he?
He shattered it.
Wow.
Oh no!
Dude, you gotta be nicer.
Go.
You did that. You did that. Oh my God!
Wow. I hope he didn't break.
Bro, I would not be sharing any snacks with that. What is that, a deer, a reindeer? He straight charged a ostrich. Oh no.
Oh my God!
Oh man, is it still alive? Oh no.
There's something on there, but very little. No way. No way. Ow. Ow. That really hurt. Wow. That thing just grabbed onto me and smashed my foot. Oh, dude, he cut through my freaking... Wow. He just punched through my brand new booties. Wow. Check this out. Oh, man. Dude, that is crazy. So supposedly, mantis shrimp has the most powerful punch in all of the animal kingdom. And I just felt it. This dude grabbed a hold of my booty and did whatever they do. Put a hole in this booty that is literally the second time I've ever used it. They're brand new. And then a hole into my foot. Yeah. That's proof right there of the power. The power of the freaking mantis shrimp. Oh my gosh.
And he just got it hanging around the family jewels like that? What is wrong with you? Throw that back overboard.
If there's no such things as aliens on Earth, then how do you explain this? Look at that little tentacle that used to be your foot, and all of a sudden it just fixes.
That's a good question.
See that little...
Maybe this is AI alteration.
It's got some kind of like tentacle foot.
It like wraps.
And then it fixes itself. I think this is
maybe
unequivocal proof that we've been visited.
Do you believe in the
by
reptilians?
I don't know what that was. It looked octopusilian.
It looks like a tail, though.
I don't think this was edited. It's like the ankle just snapped out of position and snapped back like a tentacle. You know, there's definitely something crawling around in Hollywood. I ain't gonna lie. That's why the dude picked her up so quick. He's like, uh-oh. Cover's blown.
Okay, now, William Morris is from the book, the Nos Confunden. That's where this whole idea came from. But he would have done the same thing. He would have left the United States, and he would have went south, and he found an opening somewhere here. They call it, I think, the Summer Gate. But he would have found an opening, and then he would have went through and found the same thing, the Ancestral Republic, which they said they were as far from the ice wall as we were, similar, just in the opposite direction. And that makes sense. They may have been right here. That's the same amount of distance to there as it is from the United States to there. So it all makes sense if you look at it from a broad perspective. So that's 1783. Now, there was the late 1800s, E.W. Barrington did the same thing, and he found an opening. When he got close enough to the opening, he even said to his captain, let's go in there. And the captain's like, no, if we go in there, it's not wide enough for us to turn around. And if we come to a wall, then we're dead. But when they got close enough to it, it sucked them in. The current sucked them in, and they went in anyway. He called it the Barrington Strait. That was in the book, E.W. Barrington's book, The Iron Republic. That's another good read. If you like the Nos Confunden books, I would definitely recommend reading that. And there's even history on that, pictures of his boat and stuff. So that was a real journey. And he said the same thing, that he went through the ice wall and found more land. But I think the overall main point is that if you're going to travel long distances between these, the best vessel you could have is a dual purpose vessel. One that can fly and one that can be submerged and go underwater. And that's what we've heard from old sea captains talking about, seeing underwater submerged objects.
What about an airship that runs off the ether? That would just coast through over all that. Am I tripping, or what do y'all think?
Fly out of the water and fly away. So the best means of travel, if you're going to do mass distances, would be a vehicle that could do both. Okay, now, William Morris is...
All right, we're going to dive into William Morris. Let's see what the fuss is about. We're diving in to William Morris. I still got those face huggers on my browser. I'm still tripping over yesterday's episode, yeah. We need to go live at some point and recover our tracks on that, and we got to come together as a collective on that. That was wild. If you haven't seen that, what are you doing? You need to watch that. All right, William Morris. See, that's that AI. All I did was type in William. It said William Morris Ice Wall. Unbelievable.
Alright everybody, I'm back. I'm not banned anymore, and I've got an amazing story to tell you about the first ever ice wall explorer in the late 1700s, Mr. William Morris. Now this entire story comes from written accounts that have been hidden for hundreds of years up until recently, when the author Nos Confunden wrote about his story after coming across these documents that basically just told what he had found beyond the ice wall and what he had to go through to come back and tell the story to the whole world without triggering another great reset. Now this story begins when William Morris's crew sailed all the way to Antarctica looking for the rumored Summer's Gate, which is supposedly an opening in the ice wall that only appears when it gets hot enough for the ice to melt and a boat to go through. Once they got over there, they actually did find a crack in the ice wall big enough for a boat to sail through, but they were too scared to go in. But it didn't even matter at that point because they were already too close and it sucked them through. Once they emerged the other side, they came across a vast new ocean as well as a red boat That's all they described it as, just that it was red and that they had never seen anything like it before. The boat then blew a siren that was so loud and was hurting everyone on the crew. But I guess once they found out that William Morris and his crew were not a threat, that they let them onto their boat and they spoke to them and basically told them that William Morris and his crew escaped enslavement from the actual bad people in the world, and that these lands that were outside of the ice wall are actually the peaceful place, and that where we live is the place that there are evil leaders running everything. The captain in the red boat said that he was from the Ancestral Republic and that they had been trying to liberate the people from the Middle Earth area in the inner ice wall continents for hundreds of years, but they have not been able to because they keep causing great resets where the entire population is basically wiped out and the rest of the people are made in baby making factories and they're grown in a lab and stuff, like the Cabbage Patch Kids stuff. So after William...
Are you kidding me? That's everything we literally been covering. What?
Morris found out that he basically made it out of enslavement by living beyond the ice wall. He stayed there for 10 years, but he just eventually went crazy with all this amazing stuff that he was discovering, all these new technologies and how good life could be for most people, that he actually went back to Earth, the middle region, and was telling people about everything that he had seen, but he had to keep it as secretive as possible so that he doesn't cause another great reset and for all of humanity to be wiped out. But yeah, that's the entire story about this guy. What do you guys think? Is it possible that this might actually be a true story? Could it be so crazy that this all actually exists and that there are secret continents in hidden areas everywhere else?
Hey, he's not playing. He's trying to go to the wall. They're making a reset for entertainment purposes only. How does the reset happen? You know, it kind of reminds me of what was that anime called? Dr. Stone. You know, when something mysteriously happens to everyone. Yeah, the buttons are clicking, ain't they? So everyone that watched Dr. Stone, I bet it blew your mind now, huh? It was a reset. But how did the reset happen? Drop in the comments below. What was this? Like some type of, I don't know. I have no idea. One giant Men in Black flash. I have no idea. But they're like in the inner wall, the Middle Earth. They said you guys are living in the bad guys where they keep doing resets. How wild is that? William Morris, boy.
This pilot from Yakutia couldn't be believed until he showed this video. Flying over the mountains of Yakutia, he saw a strange stripe, but upon closer inspection, he was shocked by an infinitely long fence. But even more mysterious is that exactly the same wall is hidden at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Not long ago, this wall could be seen on Google Maps, but today cartographers have erased all mentions and photos of this fence. Researchers divers say that at the base in some places there are strong disruptions resembling explosions, and the height is uneven, becoming lower in some places. But the scariest thing discovered at the base of these walls is broken equipment of unknown civilizations. This pilot from Yakutia could...
Something's definitely up, man. These civilizations beyond the wall, this ain't adding up. This is by Christina Brunu the Moose 1111. Christina Brunu the Moose 4 1s. That's giving us this cliff notes on this amazing book. If I was a reader, man, I would definitely be getting this book and read it. And I might start having to become a reader because I got so many good reads I got to read now. The Apocrypha, this. And you can put the pieces together because what did it say in the Book of Jubilee or Jashir? It said that Enoch went beyond these lands and got, you know, with the rode off on a horse on a whirlwind. So it's like, you got the knowledge. My people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6, I believe. You know, so it's like, man, it makes you think, huh? Drop your comments below, man. We're going to go through this list. We're going to get the whole story. So use this time, get you some snacks, get you something cold to drink, kick your feet up, throw a Jack's pizza, throw a pizza in the oven. You know, I hope you got some marinara to dip your crust in, like how I get down, you know, and let's lock in, man. This is dark waters for real. We be on these waters for so long, we find a new land.
Let me tell you all about it. Chapter 1, To Antarctica. The first chapter starts with him telling you his name and his story, a little bit of the background. He starts telling his story on one peaceful night after the surrender of Saratoga. All of these men that were on the boat were there telling stories under the moonlight, and several anecdotes arose after some whiskey to relax him of the anxiety post-war. So the discussion turns to James Cook's voyages and his obsession to cross the Antarctic Circle. Although it wasn't clear who was behind the funding, or even why this obsession, then Captain Butler, that was well respected, he also joined in on these stories. And he said that it was possible to cross the Antarctic Circle because there was a passage somewhere within this circle. And this passage was a connector to other worlds. And he had this conversation seriously, without hesitation. He wasn't just telling a story. So William turns to him with another 5 or 6 that were all speechless. They all expected him to say that it was a joke, but he never said it was. He couldn't believe that a captain was literally telling him that beyond the Arctic Circle, there were other worlds. And Butler commented that he knew very well, from good sources, from the highest levels, that they were researching and funding voyages to penetrate the harsh climate and barriers in the southern latitudes. And these expeditions were to find possible lands beyond the Antarctic continent. They were in a hurry to carry out these missions. Now, this story was super long and in great detail. He also said that he saw with his own 2 eyes a map that indicated the coordinates of such passage of the opening. He planned to start his voyage and leave by the end of November. His wife Lucy was not at all happy about it, but this didn't stop him. Now it was time to form a team. He decides to talk to former colleagues, but a lot of them were making up like the most ridiculous excuses not to go.
There's no way I'll leave my loved ones behind. I'm like, y'all all loading up and coming with me. I got sources that's telling me this spot is good. Tell everybody who believes me to meet me here at the end of November. We're gone. I will be loading up everybody. There's no way.
But he couldn't blame them because the idea of such a trip was not encouraging at all. But 2 of the men that were there the night that Butler was telling the story, they wanted to come. So he had 2 on board. And now the most difficult part was to convince Butler to come. He was truly the only one that had the true navigation skills, knowledge, and experience on where to go. And he was also an excellent leader. And without him, they had no clue what the coordinates were either. So at this point, it all relied on Butler joining the team.
We need those coordinates. Drop in the comments if you got those coordinates. We need that. What is it called? Summer Strait? The Summer Passage? Man. But I guarantee you show up anywhere near there, you're going to be met with something serious for entertainment purposes only.
For a few weeks, he built up his courage, contacted Butler, and invited him to join the team. And William Morris describes Butler's voice as being enthusiastic, But at the same time, he did not say yes right away. It was actually hard to convince him. So Butler initially declines the offer, which Morris doesn't understand. He's like very disappointed. And it was like this for a while. But unexpectedly on the morning of October 11th, Butler shows up at William Morris's home with a friend of his. His name was Flint. But Morris had never seen him before. And this guy had maps that Morris had never seen before. And he also carried a lot of documents that very few eyes had seen before. So Flint says that he accepts the deal, even if, based on what he believed, this was probably going to be a one-way trip. And this is when William Morris understood that they had to take this trip professionally, like a mission, and the adventure was about to begin. Morris was now totally obsessed with this exploration trip. So he has this big Navy ship, which was kind of old and needed some repairs. So he pours all of his money into fixing up this boat so it was in tip-top shape. William Morris was not actually aware of the dangers of this journey. He provided for himself the best equipment, but he still needed extra money because the repairs on the old Navy ship was above what he expected. But he saw it as an investment, so he pursued. He planned to start his voyage and leave by the end of November. His wife Lucy was not at all happy. Chapter 2 from the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. So the captain and Morris decide that their journey will start on November 14th. That is the set date. And his mysterious partner Flint was also joining the team. And the big Navy boat was also going to be ready before this date, so everything was on track. Those days were filled with anxiety and very little sleep. Lots of readings and lots of meetings with the team happened that week, emphasized about the most wonderful and amazing adventures that they were going to possibly encounter. But reality was about to surpass anything that their imagination could have thought of. On November 12th, 2 days before the departure date, Flint shows up at Morris's home, and he was accompanied by another man that was even more mysterious than he was. The man was all dressed in black and with a very strange accent. And this guy said that it was urgent that they enter his home immediately. So everybody comes in. So Flint had a briefcase. He sets it on the table, opens it up, and in between all of this Maria de of paperwork and papers, Flint pulls out an ancient manuscript. And then he begins to recite a part of it. And this is what he read. Then by demand I subscribe in major importance, here by desire of our lords, that the doors of knowledge be closed to those who refuse to be part of our glorious path and liberties granted. The text went on for several more lines. And then at the end, Poem Regius was recited. As soon as Flint stops reading, William Morris turns to him and says, "It sounds like you're doing some initiation ritual. What's going on?" Flint turns around and says, "Exactly, comrade. Precisely those who did not pass this initiation. We are the marginalized." Morris demanded that Flint explain exactly what was going on. He was getting kind of nervous now. William wanted to know what this all meant and what did it have to do with their voyage. So Flint says, "Look, I'm going to explain it to you a little bit." And he tells Morris that this manuscript belongs to the custodians, or as we call them, also known as the sun gods. And he told him that these sun gods found out about their trip. They found out about the trip because Butler snitched on them. He says the high spheres are aware of everything and they are not happy about this. And this manuscript explains how they will not let leave anyone, even by demand of the lords. Morris is thinking that the situation could not get any worse. Clearly already hard enough with all the risks of the harsh climate. So with all the natural events that could possibly happen, now they had to keep into consideration these unknown enemies Who are these custodians? So Finn starts walking around in circles. He doesn't know what to say. And this is when his mysterious friend opens his mouth for the very first time. He starts to say how these custodians are not happy about our trip. That this was the only thing that he was allowed to tell them, that we should all cancel the trip. He said that it wasn't worth risking our lives, but he had a threatening tone. And this is when William Morris starts to get triggered, and he tells both of them to leave his house immediately. So now Morris wants to speak with Butler and see what the hell is going on. But that day, and for the next days, Butler did not answer. He simply didn't respond to any of the attempts that William made to contact him. So William gathers an emergency team. He said that the situation was so dark and sinister, but that an inner force pushed him to continue. The passage to the other land was becoming even. Chapter 2 from the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. Chapter 2, The Custodians. Let's find out who these custodians and keep us entrapped in our domed lands are. We left off where William Morris was trying to contact Captain Butler to tell him about his unexpected visit by these strange people. Strange man that had looked at him defiantly, telling them that they needed to cancel this voyage with a threatening tone, and all at the same time while reciting something that sounded like a ritual initiation of some kind. William gathers an emergency team to see how they can continue this voyage. He wanted to give up almost, but an inner force pushed him. This passage to these other lands was getting closer. More real, but also more dangerous. Morris meets with the entire team. Butler was not there, and for weeks no one had heard from him or knew where he was. Morris tells his team about the sequence of events that happened, about the manuscript, about the custodians, about Butler being missing for about 2 weeks. Then a man named Walter said that he actually had heard about the custodians before. He wasn't really sure who they were, but it sounded like a secret organization. The situation was not encouraging. Butler was still missing, didn't show up for weeks, and at this point, the situation was not at all encouraging. With Butler missing, the plan seemed impossible. And also there was this risk with this unknown organization called the Custodians. The plan now was to postpone the trip until they could find Butler. November 14th, when everybody had canceled the trip, someone knocked on William Morris's door. And to his grand surprise, it was Captain Butler. Butler brought provisions, maps, and everything necessary to leave. Then he turns to William Morris as if nothing had happened, like if it was all okay that he had ratted everyone out to these custodians, and said, "Come on, guys, it's time to leave." William repeatedly asked him where he had been, or where he had gone, and wanted to know more about all these strange events that happened in the past 2 days. Captain Butler looks at him very calmly and says, "It was to be expected." He said he had to hide for security, and also to protect all of the documentation he had. And the most important of these things was the map. He was hiding the map. He started unfolding this map in his living room, and Morris says it was huge. He kept unfolding, unfolding, and unfolding. There was a land he had never seen before. And that's when Captain Butler gave the order to assemble the team. They had to leave today. Morris asked Butler if he knew the custodians personally, and Butler said, "The story is not what you've been told." He said, "William, the creators of the pyramids are also who we call the custodians." Butler said that they were really not okay with them crossing the poles at all, and that they found out these things via Flint. At the same time, Flint blamed Butler. So since Flint was the one that betrayed them, he said, "This is why we have to leave today. It cannot be another day." Because they apparently knew everything already, thanks to Flint. So he promised to give more details about this story once they had sailed, but it was fundamental that they leave today. So William Morris hurries to gather the entire team, and on November 14th, they leave the port of Charleston. And they only had a few stops before reaching the areas of the frozen South. Butler shouted William Morris's name and told him to immediately come on deck. A passage had just opened behind the giant walls of ice. The happiness that devoured these men was unexplainable. Butler did not hesitate for a second, and right away shot in the direction of the opening. The captain seemed to know what he was doing, driving the boat parallel to the promontory. And then a kind of current took them all the way inside. Without even being able to realize it, they were being dragged by this enormous force now. Fear paralyzed the crew. The ship was brushing its edges all along the two ice walls. The panic of the ice wall brushing the ship lasted 3 or 4 minutes, but they describe it as feeling like it was never ending. Suddenly now they were sailing on this current, and calm seemed to invade their surroundings. Cold, but not overwhelming cold. So right away we have switched climate. The narrow passage was now opening more and more. It was leading them to an open sea. William Morris said he could not believe his eyes. He was seeing this, but at the same time couldn't believe it. Behind the ice walls, there was an entire other ocean. The captain shouted, "We made it! We made it!" They all celebrated with surprise and amazement. They were in waters that only few had ever been before, or so they thought at that moment. The dark waters began to clear now. The ice walls were still visible, but they were being lost in the distance. William Morris gathered his team under the command of Captain Butler, who had summoned them all with some seriousness. He was now going to make an important announcement. He was going to tell them about the real history behind the known Earthlands and about humanity and its past. And in that moment, a colossal-sized craft appeared. This massive ship was directly going towards them. The men that were on top, seeing what was going on, ran down shouting, scared, that something gigantic was coming directly towards them. Everyone was panicking, but Butler ordered them to remain calm. And even though he remained calm, he seemed a little bit nervous. Who would be coming towards us in this gigantic craft, he wondered. This gigantic ship reached them. It was a reddish ship, and the more it got closer, the more it was even larger than what they expected. It had a blue flag with a white circle in the middle. Morris could not believe that he had just left the ice walls behind him, and now that he was seeing these people, that they didn't know who they were. This was a force that would stop them. So at this point, they are still in very dark waters. That means that it's very deep. They have an unidentified gigantic ship going straight towards them. Huge defeating sound blast into the air. They are in this new, mysterious, uncharted open ocean, and this gigantic red ship is heading towards them, a size that we have never seen in our lands. The waters were still very deep, and they describe how there was this weird climate of both hot and cold at the same time. Once the gigantic ship reached them, they saw that it had a blue flag with a white circle in the middle, a flag that they had never seen before. Screeching sound filled the air. They could hardly stand it. They could describe it as unbearable. It was some kind of a megahorn. Then a voice with a perfect English accent said, "Dear visitors from the walled lands, some of our men will come down and approach your boat. Please remain calm." William Morris was very frightened at this message. There was no way for them to escape. Their ship was gigantic. It looked like something out of a fictional tale, he describes it. But Butler reassured him that based on his knowledge, that everything was going to be okay. He knew that something like this could happen, and he told everyone to stay calm and welcome this visitor in a very kind way. These men were now making their way to Morris's ship. They had white suits. They had several emblems on them that stood out. At this point, they helped these men up and everyone was shaking hands nicely. One of them introduced themselves as the captain and wanted to know what they were doing in these seas and why they were navigating there. Butler speaks up and explains how they're navigating around the Antarctic Circle, and that a current brought them there to this open sea of theirs. He called it the other side, and that they were there to investigate these other areas. William Morris noticed that Butler and these other men were getting along. Their captain turned to the other two men with him, and he looked amazed. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. People from the other side of the ice wall had just penetrated it and gone beyond. They all looked at each other and commented between them that it had been a very, very long time since anything like this had happened. And their captain says to Butler that they were very, very sorry that their visit seemed to be unwelcomed, that it was super important to follow rigorously the directions that the other captain had given them. The men wanted to know if now Captain Butler was finally going to tell them the things that he had promised he was going to tell them. But Butler hesitated again and said not yet. It was almost as if he had changed his mind to inform the men of what he knew. Butler mentioned that after meeting these people, now things had changed. Maybe his perspective, his view had changed. He was very happy that they ran into these people and now that they could safely travel to the Ancestral Republic. He said that it would have not been the same if another boat had found them first. He said, let us remember that these are very powerful people that we left behind. Very powerful people that did not want us sailing these waters. Or knowing all of this at all. He says, let's wait until we get to the Ancestral Republic, and then maybe we will be able to explain things better. They all wanted to know more about the situation. Butler said, although we have already crossed the ice walls, the journey has just begun. It's time to understand that we are in a war zone. The last sentence left the men speechless. War zone? What do you mean? What war zone is this? And Butler gives him a brief response. Everything will become more clear as soon as we anchor. The temperatures had now changed quite a bit the farther they got away from the ice walls. The climate becomes temperate, indicating that they were arriving to these lands. And birds of various types began to be spotted the closer they got there. He had the feeling that they were making history. Next episode, Chapter 5, The Great Reset. The Great Human Reset. Are you ready to find out what the Great Reset's all about? Chapter 5 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The Human Reset. Destination, the Ancestral Republic. The team was now in voyage to the Ancestral Republic, following the directions of the captain from the Ancestral Republic Navy ship that stopped them. The night was very clear, and the sailors could see from a distance. The group was stupefied by the beauty of this giant and silent city. They describe it as like looking at an electrical city from the book of Thomas Brown. They were eager to arrive and not remain on the boat anymore because they were very uneasy about what the other captain had told them about there being a war zone, that they might not be safe. So the priority right now was to get to land, to get to the Ancestral Republic. So they're at the port of what looks like a large and modern city. And not even a couple of minutes go by that more agents dressed just like the other guys on the ship arrived to welcome them. And they were greeted. The head agent said, "Welcome to the Ancestral Republic. We are very happy of your visit to our lands. It's almost unthinkable. We were advised of your arrival, but we really didn't believe it until we saw you guys." Captain Butler thanks them on behalf of the entire boat and then introduces William Morris as the owner of the ship. William Morris said that it was an honor to be there. The entire team was still dumbfounded because they couldn't believe that beyond the Antarctic ice wall, that there were other cultures, that there were other lands. It was just impossible to set in. And they had so many questions. But the agent told them that right now it was urgent for them to go meet the president. Now Morris is describing a vehicle that they took to go meet this president that they had never seen before. The system of illumination was these electrical lanterns. There were no noises of horses or carriages. It was a very silent city, whimsical to say the least. They are describing the clothes that the other people are wearing as very colorful and totally different. And they also had these luminous devices that they were holding that would show images and voices. I think they're describing cell phones or little portable computers. And remember, this is after the Revolutionary War, so these guys had never seen this technology. It would be like someone from the past visiting us today. They finally arrived to this immense building, and each room was connected to the other. William Morris decides to touch the wall while he's going from room to room, and he said that it was cold like marble. Then there are some stairs, he becomes dizzy. Then they finally arrive to a room with all of these different chairs and seatings, and the agent tells him to wait there. And Morris says that he could have waited there forever because the comfort of these seats was something that he had never experienced before. After a while, a man with a mustache comes out and addresses Morris and says, "Are you William Morris from the United States of America?" And Morris says, "Yes." And the man says, "My name is Fael. I am so sorry you have arrived at these times that we are going through now. If you had come at any other time, the situation would have been so much better and different." Morris said that he had so many questions, but he was living in a state of confusion at the moment, and he couldn't get a single word out. And Fael continues his story. And he tries to explain how there is this war that before was far away, but now it also involves them here at the Ancestral Republic. And although Morris didn't really quite understand the situation, he kept on nodding and saying yes, yes, as if he did, because he wanted to hear more of the story. And maybe after that, he could understand what was going on. Fael, with all seriousness, looks at Morris and says, "I don't think you fully understand. We are part of what you would call the old humanity. I mean, we were not part of the last reboot. Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what the reboot process is? There are many humanities in different times, as well as there are many resets and many reboots. And this happens every certain amount of time that has already been stipulated. And if it's done before that date, it's for external reasons." And he says, "At least for now, this is how it has always happened." Then he reveals some shocking information explaining how natural disasters are also part of this manipulation to reboot humanity. The navigator who crossed the ice walls. William Morris is now speaking with the president of the Ancestral Republic, Fael. And he's trying to explain to Morris how they are part of the old humanity, the humanity before the last great reset. Obviously, William Morris had no idea what this all meant, so he tried to break it down for him. Morris had every desire to tell him that he understood, but the truth is that he was totally lost. There were many humanities in different times, as well as there were many reboots and resets. This happens every certain time already stipulated, or it is done before that date for external reasons. I mean in a way intentionally created before reaching that time. As far as we know here in this reality, it always happens this way, since the natural way is also carried out by manipulating the environment where you come from. So the reboot is a process they carry out in their lands.
It sounds like heart, man. Wow.
To extinguish all of humanity that are in those specific areas. Again, this is a book. It is not factual. And every time they do this, they only leave the population of all of the newborn babies. This way, those babies will repopulate those areas. And this process is carried out over and over and over again. Woof! I wouldn't want to live in this book, right? So when the ruling class of elites that live beyond the ice wall and the ruling class that live within our ice wall that are aware of the other elites, when someone gets out of control or the situation is out of control, then that is a justification for a reboot. A reboot can be done in many ways. It could be done with natural disasters, calamities, floods, viruses, wars, plagues, and they even said that asteroids are actually bombs that are sent on purpose. So it doesn't really matter how. The fact that we've escaped before is reason enough for them to press that reset button. So Fayed looks at William Morris and he says, "Do you understand, William?" William's head was spinning to the point that he felt so dizzy that he thought that he was going to just fall over. And although William Morris understood what President Fayed was telling him, he could not accept that the lands where he was born had all this situation going on and he was never aware. The President Fayed then explains that even although they are not in this conflict directly, no one is out of this conflict. Then he apologizes to Morris and says that he's very sorry, but that this is all the time he had, and now he had to urgently go do something else, and leaves. Morris is now left alone with the agent in the room, and the agent himself was feeling bad for Morris. He could see the pain in his face. The fact that Morris understood what was going on back in his lands, it was very heartbreaking for him. Now Morris returns to the boat to tell the others everything that he had discovered, but Captain Butler was not there. Morris gathers his team together and tells him everything that President Fayed had told him. He told him the situation, even though it was very little what he understood, and the group was even more stunned than he was and understood even less. The men were clearly all in a state of crisis now. So Morris asks, where did Butler go? And the men tell him that Butler left the ship as soon as he left to go meet the president. But no one knew where he was. So now again, here we are. Butler had disappeared and he was in unknown lands. William was silent, pensive, all of this going around in his head. The old humanity, the intentional death of populations. Who could carry out these plans? And why the intention of all of it? And while he was contemplating on this, a huge sound came from the sky. It was an explosion. The earth shook and everybody laid on the ground immediately. Even the water was shaking and the ship. The ship itself seemed as if it was made out of paper. Chapter 6 from the book The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The Anakim Giants from the South. After William Morris speaks with Fayed, the president from the Ancestral Republic, he returns to his ship. He is confused. He is in disbelief. He wants to tell his crew members everything that he learned. And it's at this point that he realizes Captain Butler is not on the ship. The men tell him that he had just left after Morris had gone to speak with Fayed, the president, and has not yet returned. So again, we are missing Butler, just like in the beginning of the story. No one knows where he is. And this is when a huge explosion happens in the sky. Morris explains how they were taken to the ground by the earth shaking, the waters were shaking, the ship was shaking. He describes the ship as seeming to be made out of paper. He said that everything exploded around them. Our eyes were wide open, but we had no understanding of what was happening around us. We ran to the deck and saw the worst landscape that anyone could ever see. Not even in their times of war had they seen. They said everything was literally destroyed. People were screaming in the streets and an alarm sound was activated. Yet they couldn't tell from where it was coming from. The only thing they knew is that it could be heard throughout the entire city. This is when a voice tried to calm people down. But unfortunately, it was too late. They had reached the Ancestral Republic. In the next episode, I'll tell you all about the Anakim Giants from the lands of the South.
Oh my God. This story is getting crazy. You got giants coming. They made it beyond the wall, and it makes sense that, there'll be conflict beyond the wall because they probably already knew. Admiral Byrd probably found out back in the day. Like, oh, there's other land out there, huh? For entertainment purposes only. Oh, there's other land out there, huh? I want that. And you didn't hear Operation Ice Climb. That's a new one. We had Operation Fishbowl, Operation High Jump, Operation Starfish. You ain't hear about Operation Ice Jump, where they try to take over. That's all they do is take over and conquer. So it makes sense for entertainment purposes only. We gotta keep hearing this, y'all. I know it's the same person, and normally I switch it up, but you cannot tell me this isn't interesting. I want to hear it.
You are going to be really happy to know that the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls, and the book, The One World Tartarians, are validating themselves. And they're not even closely, even remotely written by similar people. Two totally different things. But it's really cool. Let me tell you all about it. Chapter 6, The Anakim Giants of the South. In the last episode, we left off after William Morris and his team and everything surrounding them was turned to dust and rubble, literally like the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah. And they could hear enemy crossfires in the distance as well. William Morris said that everything was getting out of control in like minutes. And in the sky, thousands of spheres with red lights showed up. Morris wasn't sure if these spheres were from the Republic or if they were the enemies of the Republic. But it almost seems as if like they were recording what was happening. It sounds a little bit like drones, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Morris tells how he wanted to help the people and everything that they saw, but at the same time, they needed to get that boat and get out of there. And the voice that they heard, like on the megaphones before, that was trying to calm everybody down, now was telling everyone to immediately go to the presidential building. Now, this is when Morris realizes something really, really weird about the sun and the moon. He said that he was in anguish and in fear and just looking at the sky for mercy. The sky was a furious red tone, and for some reason, he said that when he was looking at the sun, it was darkened. It didn't hurt his eyes. He could look directly at it. I could observe that the sun's glow did not burn my sight. It had a dark tone, and what I thought was the moon stood out in this distance in a totally black color, as in the middle of an eclipse. He thought then that it was the strangest sky. We certainly had never seen the sun and the moon behave this way in our known lands. Then add on all of these thousands of spheres that were going around like eyeballs, looking and watching everyone. Morris wanted to know where these spheres came from and who sent them, because as much as he was observing them, their maneuvers were not that of any attack or anything. It just looked like a whole bunch of spying eyes. Morris now lost sight of all of his crew members. He says that everybody was vanished. He couldn't recognize anyone. He was there standing at the presidential building, as that voice had said, and all of the other people were looking at him with suspicion. Of course, he was the newcomer now. He didn't know what to do because as a member of the Continental Navy, he felt an obligation towards his men to help them and look for them. But he couldn't see anyone. He had no idea where anyone was. Morris is desperately trying to find someone high in command because he wants to offer his services. He doesn't want to be just a bystander now. He feels attached to this ancestral republic, even though he's never been there before. He says he felt like they were his land also. In the distance, Morris catches President Fayed. He sees him, and guess what? He's talking with Captain Butler, that had previously gone missing since he had talked to the president. Morris calls out to him, and Captain Butler gives him a Navy salute from far away. And he says that Butler looked very, very depressed. Morris gets close to President Fayed, and then he sees that he's yelling at his luminous device, which again sounds like a phone or a little computer. He said that from this phone there was a repeated constant message. And the following was clearly heard. We are requesting support from the Anakim. We have no choice, Fayed. This was a planned attack to destroy a civilian and secure area. There is no turning back. Butler then looks at Morris with the typical look of leadership, reinforcing what he just heard, meaning he was saying, yes, you heard that correctly. Morris asks Butler in a very low tone of voice, and he says, did I hear correctly? Are they mentioning giants? And Butler nodded his head, yes, you did. They are giant warriors from the south. File heard what Butler and Morris were talking about, and he went closer and he said, I'll tell you more. Not only are they giant warriors, but they are our saviors. They are the ones that led us to these lands before the last reset. The president then leaves with the 3 men that accompanied him. He goes into his office. Then Butler...
Don't tell me this is Attack on Titan now. Oh my God. Beyond the ice walls? Now we got giants? If you guys seen Attack on Titan, you know where this is going.
Tells Morris to come with him. And they were running through with all of these agents going back and forth. Everyone feared that there was going to be another attack. Now Captain Butler tells Morris that they need to hurry up back to the ship because they're going to go to their next destination. And Morris had so many questions because he didn't even know if his boat was still outside since they kept on hearing explosions coming from the outside. Captain Butler said that this was not exactly File's plans, but that the moment requested it, it required it. Now they were looking for the rest of the team in a hurry. The plan now was to gather their team and now set sail for the Anakim lands. And this is when Butler tells Morris that he's very sorry that he couldn't tell him sooner, but he said, I have ancestral blood running through my veins. Some of you are going to be really happy to know that the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls, and the book, Chapter 7 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. In the last episode, we discovered about the Anakim giants, but they're not to be confused with the Anunnaki. They are a different race. The Anakim giants in these books are the guys that saved that fraction of humanity that then afterwards became the Ancestral Republic. They saved the humans at the last reset, so they're not the bad guys. There are a lot of speculation going around about the Anakim giants. Some think that they are the same as the Anunnaki. While they are not, they're a totally different race. And then other people are thinking that they were bad, but they're absolutely not. They are the ones that saved humanity. There was this story going around saying that the Anakim giants were spotted on Earth and that they were taken out. Hooray, we did it. No hooray, because technically they are the saviors. So no booing the Anakim giants. Last episode, we left off that there had just been this massive explosion at the Ancestral Republic. William Morris had lost sight of all of his team members. He finds Butler that was speaking with the president, and the president is on the phone talking about the Anakim giants. And William Morris is like, did I just hear correctly? Giants? And Butler nods his head saying, yes, you heard correctly. Captain Butler also admits that he is from the Ancestral Republic. And I think that he was like doing espionage in the known lands. Because originally, he said he is from there, that these are his brothers and sisters that were attacked. Now remember the drone eyeballs, those round spheres that were flying around? Morris says that he looks up at the sky, and there are these huge formations with thousands and thousands of blue birds. At this point, they need to evacuate, and everyone is running. They're running on ships, they're running on boats. The entire Ancestral Republic is being evacuated. And this is when Butler says to Morris, do you want to stop looking at the sky? Relax. The Iron Birds are our friends. They are defeating the enemy. In fact, these Iron Birds were attacking the spheres and sending them away. So the spheres were part of the bad guys. So Captain Butler, Morris, and the team arrive at their supposed destination. There were many agents waiting for Butler, and they all seemed to be very relieved that he was okay. They reproached them for their delay. Then they waited for a few minutes, and this is when they were taken and put on a silver platform, and they were being brought to the top of someplace. Morris says that there was a contradictory view because everything was magnificent and so beautiful, but at the same time, it was between fire, death, and desolation. They get to the top of this place and they see that on the other side there is this huge modern city with structures never seen before. It was an absolute representation of prosperity. In the sky, the iron blues, the birds, were still fighting against the spheres. Now that they are at the top floor, the agents greet them and tell them that they are going to have the most unique experience. They are going to touch the clouds. The ships that they were about to take were nothing of what they could have possibly imagined. This structure was huge, and it all seemed to be made out of one piece. And there were routes in the skies, leading to different places and then back again. It was like a skyway. And these iron structures would get lost in the horizon because they would go so far that your naked eye could not see the end of them. One of the agents told them that all of these structures were connecting all of the big cities. It was a travel method for them. Morris was told to prepare himself because he was about to experience something that he would never forget. A dark blue ship was awaiting for them and had one side that opened. Morris sits next to Butler in these rows of 4 seats. He says that the inside looked even bigger than what it looked like from the outside. The ship takes off, and all of a sudden, Morris and his team start feeling dizzy, and some are passing out. They're fainting. He said that it was like being ejected from an enormous cannon. It was just unbearable if you're not used to it. At times, they would take long tunnels. And when everything would go dark in the tunnels, that is when Morris said that they felt like passing out. But after 20 minutes, they were now traveling smoothly. While they're traveling, they saw these small islands that looked like paradise. In fact, nearby, there were the islands of Eden. Morris was captivated by his surroundings, but at the same time, he needed to pay attention to what Butler was saying to the other agents because they were all talking about strategies. And at a certain point, he heard that they were poisoning the air, and he's like, what? What do you mean poisoning the air? Morris describes their conversation as being in code almost. And when Captain Butler noticed that Morris was like looking at him confused, this is when Butler beat him to the punch and explained everything. He says, they poison the air. How can I explain this? The human that is born in their lands gets sick quickly due to the work that the custodians do. This disease is usually implanted in the first humans, or to better say, the babies left to repopulate. They do this to the first and sometimes the second generation.
They said they seen the Garden of Eden while on the ship. This story is crazy.
Are you ready to find out more about the Ancestral Republic? This is the end of Chapter 7, the beginning of Chapter 8 of the book, The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Walls. The people in the Ancestral Republic that are simply us humans before the last Great Reset that were saved by the Anakim giants and brought to these safe lands where they created the Ancestral Republic. So basically, they are just like us, but without the modifications of the last Great Reset. And this is one of my favorite parts of the book. The conversation is between William Morris and Captain Butler. William asks Captain Butler, what does it mean that we have shortened lifespans? Butler explains that the people in the Ancestral Republic live 3 times longer than us in the known lands, because there is no such modification in their bodies. If you haven't seen the previous episodes, if you want to catch up, there's a playlist, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Butler explains that to achieve their total control, the custodians need to shorten our lifespan. Now, why? Butler explains that this disease makes our bodies age rapidly, and the custodians prefer it this way because long longevity brought problems previously. But with age also comes knowledge, and at this point you have more time to analyze the situation and try to resolve it. Butler explains how they modified humans and molded them for their usefulness. This way, they could avoid any conflict. The idea is to always fulfill the cycle called natural. And obviously, that comes naturally with the next reset. And Butler explains to Morris how they recently tried to do another one of these cycles to the Ancestral Republic people, saying they first want to shorten our lifespan to achieve their control. William Morris and his crew couldn't believe their ears. Everyone was absolutely outraged at hearing this. How could they do this? It was just a little bit too much information. It sounded unreal. Custodians were shortening our lives and making us miserable. And Morris says, I understood then that there was no freedom of any form in the known lands. How could we free our people from this perverse power? And how could you declare war on an enemy of which everyone was unaware of? And what was the human like without this control over them? What could we possibly have achieved if we had longer lifespans? The answer was right in front of them, looking at the Ancestral Republic and all of its prosperity. That is what humans could have achieved in the known lands if they didn't have this custodial interruption. You see, in the Ancestral Republic, you remained a child without any thoughts or worries until the age of 240, 250. Insane, right? I know. So just imagine how wise an elder from the Ancestral Republic could be. Without the cursed custodial control, in the next episode, Morris and his team arrive to the capital called Arca. Are you ready to find out more about the Ancestral Republic?
Man, this is completely blowing my mind. I'm seeing so many correlations, and it lines up. They said, look at what we can achieve. We're not worried about paying rent and working our lives away. We're just living. Jeez, for entertainment purposes only, this is just a story. But let me know what you guys think below. I'm going to try to get as far as I can on this, guys.
Ice Walls. Chapter 8, Human Greatness. William Morris and the crew are on their way to the capital, El Arca. Morris, Captain Butler, and the entire crew arrive in this luminous city. Morris said that he would never have even been able to imagine such a city. It was just so surreal. People filled the public spaces, restaurants, and walkways. He describes them as almost looking like they're going to collide, but they never do. Everyone moves in a perfect synchronicity almost. Captain Butler is leading the way. In the sky, there are these huge transparent spheres that go from one way to the other. And typically it carries one person, but in some occasions they were even seeing two. And these were moving transparent spheres that would float in the air. I guess that this is the place where everything actually became like the Jetsons. Like when we were kids, we were waiting finally for the year 2020 for the Jetsons reality to be all around us. And yet, besides cell phones, computers, Teslas, I don't know, things like that, nothing ever really changed. Like we're still using the same furniture, the same kind of cars. It's weird, since everyone expected us to be a lot more evolved by now. So the first thing they see are these spheres being driven by people, strange balloons that floated across the sky. The weird thing about the citizens of El Arca is that even though a few miles away there was this huge war that just started and was taking place, they weren't affected by it. They were totally acting normal with nonchalance, like continuing their everyday life. Now in the capital, El Arca, Morris tells us that they don't speak English. See, there are a lot of comments that wanted to know why they spoke perfect English in the Ancestral Republic. Well, here in El Arca, they do not. It's actually a foreign language, a language they had never heard before. In fact, Morris makes reference that if they had lost sight of Butler, they wouldn't even know how to communicate with these people because of this weird language that was impossible to decipher and like none other he had ever heard. He asked himself, was this the native language? A time before time? What if it was the first spoken language? Remember, in this book, the situation is that the people from the known lands had been subjected to a great reset and forgot all of their real history. The team was very united. This fantastic new adventure, these new worlds that no one had any idea about, was bringing the team closer. Everyone was very excited to meet these Anakim giants. They could not believe that they really existed. Morris was afraid that this attack on the Ancestral Republic was their fault. Was this the punishment because they had left the known lands? The entire team threw themselves into all of these theories and trying to figure out what it all meant. Of course, they had not received all of the information they needed. They were starting to think that the ice walls were artificial. Another big question that they had were the custodians other humans? Are they another race? New races, just like the giants. So far, they had new races, giants, artificial walls. They began to dig so deep into these theories that they sounded borderline ridiculous. The team reunites with Captain Butler, and Captain Butler tells them that they're going to take a boat now and points in the direction of a harbor at a boat that looks just like the huge, gigantic red one that approached them in the beginning as soon as they had crossed the ice walls. Everything was ready for them to leave for the Anakim lands, but first they were going to make a stop at a place called the Captain's Land. They get onto the ship and they said that every room had the decor of like a different era, but an era that was unknown. How many eras were there that the known land people were not privy to, had no clue? Everything was so difficult to understand, and the technology that they were seeing was advanced light years compared to ours. They were told that the ship they were on could practically take care of itself. It was very silent, and from the inside, you could not even hear the water on the outside. Then Morris notices that the waters outside were calm, but calm in a way that it was stable. And this was going on for the entire trip. Their waters didn't move like ours. Now he's obsessed with figuring out why the waters don't move like ours. And this is when he started to think about the moon that was 3 times brighter than how we see it from the known lands. He said that the sun was a totally different color than ours, and that there was also another sphere that was bluish black in the sky. Nevertheless, this other sphere was also part of the firmament.
Oh my God, it just gets more interesting and interesting. How much more? It just keeps going, man. It's just, I think there's like 6 or 7 more, but man, we're already so deep in this. We might have to go live and finish this one out, man. That was by Cristino Bruno the Moose. Very interesting story, breaking that book down for us, saying it has some correlations with the one Tartarian Empire. It's a fascinating story, man, because it gives you a little glimpse of, for entertainment purposes only, beyond the ice wall. And they're saying the ice wall might even be artificial. How crazy is that? If you guys made it so far, the code word today is beyond. Be sure to drop beyond in the comments so I know you're a real one. And I just thank you guys for hanging out with me on this episode, man. We went deep all the way through there. There's more to it, and it's already late, man. I gotta chop this boy out and give it to y'all, man. But I appreciate all you guys for chopping in. See you on the next one. Peace.